Hey guys, back again with another review. This time I went back a ways to the Sega CD with Snatcher. Now, this is a game I've been wanting to play for quite a long time now. And it's one of those games that's super expensive and super rare. So I don't have a Sega Genesis, I don't have a Sega CD, so I did play this on a ROM. It was one of those situations where I'd wanted to play this game for so long, and it's a game that honestly I don't think I'll ever own. Especially with me taking a back seat in terms of collecting. That's not to say I won't get this one day, and I feel like I really need to get this now because I love this game. But it's one of those games that's just, it's so expensive, I just couldn't justify the cost because I'd have to get a Sega CD as well, and those aren't that cheap. But I just felt the need to play a game like this. It's a graphic adventure game, but it shares a lot in terms of similarities with visual novel games like 999 and the Ace Attorney games, which I'm going to start the Ace Attorney games soon, don't worry. But I don't know, for some strange reasons I felt in the mood for an older game and I wanted to play Snatcher, so I did. You know what? This game's got a cult following, and I definitely see why. This game, I love it. And it's interesting for me to say that because for the longest time, I've always, like, Hideo Kojima, he, created this game way before the Metal Gear Solid games. Or the Metal Gear Solid series, I should say. Obviously, Metal Gear was before this, but... and I've always kind of felt like, I don't know, like I said before, I'm not super into the Metal Gear Solid games, so going into this I wasn't sure what to expect. I don't really praise Kojima like a lot of people do, so I don't know, I was maybe going into this with like not super high expectations, even though I know a lot of people love this game, but I came away super impressed from the storyline perspective mostly, and that's where I'm going to start with this review, the story. And this is a spoiler-free review. I'm not going to spoil anything because I would never want to do that because the story is, I think, the most important part in a game like this, and the story here is excellent. You play as an amnesiac, which stick with me here. This game, uses that kind of plot device, but it uses it to good effect here. And this was when it wasn't like a played out, cliche type thing like it is with a lot of games and movies these days. Back then, this was a fairly fresh concept, I think. But you play a Gillian Seed, who's an amnesiac, and it takes place in Japan in a city called Nyokobi, where Snatchers are kind of overtaking the city. And what Snatchers are they're basically robots that take over the form of humans. They kill humans and then take their forms. So it's kind of got like an Invasion of the Body Snatchers vibe there. And they're very hard to tell that they're Snatchers or not. And it's very hard to tell if a human is a human or a Snatcher. And basically there's like these the Junker HQ, where that consists of Junkers, which are kind of like detectives, but they also hunt down Snatchers, like an anti-Snatcher task force. And as Gillian Seed, at the beginning of the game, you're assigned a new job as a Junker here, and that's where the story begins. And that's all I really want to say about this game, because there's a lot of different mysteries that unravel, and the game really takes its time with its story and its storytelling. You kind of solve mysteries one at a time, and a lot of this is dialogue driven, and it plays out like an adventure game where you choose different options, dialogue options. And obviously there's more to this story than what I just said. There's a computer in the beginning of the game that you read up on that outlines the catastrophe. I don't want to go over what that is, but it's an important element to the plot. There's a bunch of different important elements and key moments in history. Like, this game takes place in the future, I think 2047, I want to say, but you got to take note of events that happened in the past in the reality that takes place in this game, and I thought it's really neat how it all kind of comes together, especially towards the end, and the game does explain a lot to you. You can get by without doing too much exploration as far as the computer system. The computer system in this game, you use it and you find all this information there. Like a crazy amount of information is there for you to look at, and that will help you understand the story and the world a lot better than if you were just play the game straight from beginning to end. But one of the fun things in this game is exploring the world and you know, finding out the history of this world. And this game has like a Blade Runner-esque look to it. And it reminds me of like film noir a lot of times too. And that's what I love about this game. You know, it's billed as a cyberpunk adventure, and it definitely feels like that. And I gotta say, I'm a fan of cyberpunk kind of stuff. I think that stuff's always fascinating. I just like cyberpunk, and this game's an excellent, it's an excellent cyberpunk type game. But that's all I want to go over in terms of the story. The main character, Gillian Seed, a great character. I really like him. All the characters in this game are really top notch, and you can you use this computer system to get some of their background info and stuff like that. It's really an excellent story and it plays Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. It's very much like a film, and you can tell right as far back as Snatcher, Hideo Kojima, he really is a visionary. I really like the storyline he came up with for this game. It's really fascinating, and it's filled with so many mysteries that were just so much fun to uncover. And once these revelations start happening, they happen very slowly, but once you do figure out things and plot twists are revealed to you, you're just like, holy shit, like this game just has like, it just grips you and keeps you interested the whole way through. That said, the first two acts really take their time, and it's, the plot twists aren't always obvious, and it's a bit of a slow build, but it's rewarding in a way. The last act is where I kind of take issue with some of the story, where it kind of dumps out a lot of information at you all at once. All of a sudden, it feels rushed a bit, I felt, in the last act. And then the game just ends. I don't know, it caught me off guard, and some of the plot twists towards the end, I already figured out like way ahead of time, so it wasn't, I don't know, to me the ending felt a bit rushed. And a lot of it kind of gets silly too, I thought. This isn't a super convoluted storyline or anything, which is good. That's one of the reasons why I like the storyline in this game so much. But I don't know, the ending, I liked it. I felt it could have been a bit better though, and it did disappoint me a bit, considering how much I was enjoying the storyline for those first two acts. Now, the writing in the game, I thought it was really good. The localization, I'm surprised how good it is in this game. The game, it breaks the fourth wall, which is kind of funny. I wasn't expecting that, and usually I kind of hate that stuff, but for this game it worked. And a lot of humor shines through. This game is a funny game. A lot of the writing is funny. There's a lot of like sexual content in this game, and the Japanese version, I know one of the characters was 14, one of the female characters was 14, and if the dialogue was like the same, really, as like in the Japanese version as it is here, there's some problems there. I can see why they changed that character to 18. It was Japanese, yeah, the humor really shines through. It's really funny, but at the same time, this game has a dark tone to it as well. A lot of it is quite graphic in terms of gore. This game is rated teen, and honestly, I was shocked that that they got away with some of the stuff in this game with a teen rating. I thought it should have been rated M. I should mention the Sega CD version is kind of like this game was originally a Japan-only Japanese computer game. Eventually got a release on the PC Engine in 1992, and the Sega CD version is that one, which was a remake of those older computer versions. But this is one of those games that it really feels kind of ahead of its time as far in terms of storytelling. You didn't really see storylines this, storylines like this back then. This storyline isn't completely original. Obviously it's got shades of Blade Runner, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It's not a completely original storyline, but it all wraps up really nicely, and it's got a lot of intriguing elements. It reminded me of 999 a lot playing through this game. Anytime a new revelation would happen, or something like a holy shit moment came up, or a plot twist comes up that you weren't expecting, it just brought me back to playing 999 again. I love that. And this if you're into visual novel games like they are nowadays, I'd really highly recommend going back and playing Snatcher. I think it's like basically considered a graphic adventure game, but I don't know. Back then, it's not as obtuse as a lot of the games back then, like those LucasArts point-and-click adventures or the Sierra ones. Like those games, I thought were like overly obtuse, just hard to figure out and kind of unfair at times too. This game's actually very simple to play. Other than there was one moment where I got stuck and I had to use a walkthrough, but other than that, this game, it's pretty easy to figure out. The problem is, though, you have to kind of go through a lot of like dialogue options over again to figure out how you progress in the game. I should talk about kind of how the game flows. It's basically you have static images, and basically I'll throw up gameplay so you can get a general idea of how it goes. But you'll be in these locations. You kind of go through a menu-based system where you look at different areas in the environment, and you can investigate different areas in the environment, and you can talk to people in some of the environments. And a lot of the times you might have to look at the same place twice for a new option to appear, and then you got to go to that option, and then magically you'll be able to progress to another area. Which that kind of confused me. I definitely got stuck a lot in the beginning because a lot of the times it was just a simple matter of choosing an option I had already chosen before. So that was kind of frustrating. There are some obtuse elements here. One particular puzzle, because the first two acts there's a lot of puzzles, whereas the third act they pretty much drop them entirely. And one of the puzzles I thought was hard to figure out, but for a reason I didn't like. I don't want to spoil it, but it was one of those things where it just... I don't know, I don't see how I could possibly have figured it out, really. But overall, the puzzles are really good because they kind of require you to go through these environments and scour them and pay attention to what's being said. And it adds to the, being a detective. This game really makes you feel like a detective. Going back to your computer and kind of inputting a character's name and getting information on them and using that computer to get information that will help you solve a puzzle in some other environment. You're returning to your Junker HQ and you're like putting together profiles of like people you found, and it's got that noir feel, like a film noir detective movie kind of feel, and I love that. It really made me feel like a detective, and the mysteries in this game were just really fun to uncover. Like I said before, as I said before too, the localization was great. I thought the writing was really smart. It was funny when it needed to be, but it was also dark when it needed to be. And like I've said before, it's graphic at times. But really what helps make this game so atmospheric, and I'm going to mention that, atmospheric, this game's got atmosphere, and I love how atmospheric this game is, are the visuals and music. Now, the visuals aren't much when you really think about them. They're just static images, but there's a lot of detail to them, and they've got this great hand-drawn look, and the aesthetic is so Blade Runner-esque and futuristic, and I love it. It's just the environments, even though, I say environments, they're just like these still images, they look fantastic. There's so much detail to them. And the music goes along perfectly with them. The music in this game, it's almost hard to describe. It's very like synth-heavy, but it's very focused on melody too, and a lot of it is really dark and somber, and it fits this game and the style so perfectly, and it just melds together with those images, which are very dark, and even though like there's a lot of detail to them and there's not much moving animations or anything like that, you really get a feel for these environments, and that alongside the music, you really feel like you're in this world, even though this game was made in like the 80s, the original versions, and it's just everything feels so meticulous, and just I don't know, I felt so immersed in this world, and the music and visuals were a huge part of that. I got it. Like, the music, honestly, as much as I love the story in this game, the music might be my favorite part of this game. The soundtrack is just amazing. The kind of soundtrack you just don't hear in games anymore. And a lot of it's really catchy, too. One song in particular I want to mention is the song that plays when you talk to your wife on the video phone. The song that plays in that section reminds me of like Earthbound Mother, a song that would appear in that game. I just loved that song so much. Other than that, though, the gameplay, you have a companion, Metal Gear, which is your kind of robot companion that follows you around, and you can kind of access him to help you with puzzles. Sometimes he'll tell you a general idea of what you're supposed to be doing if you're getting stuck, which I liked too. That helped make the game go by faster. But he also has a video phone option where you can kind of type in phone numbers and talk to people, and sometimes a lot of the puzzles are based on that. You got to find certain phone numbers and talk to certain people, which is a really neat thing. You can turn on his light if you're in dark areas. All in all, he's just a really good help, and his personality is great. Metal Gear's personality is awesome, really funny. The writing for Metal Gear was fantastic, and I loved having him as a character alongside. Like, the relationship between Gillian and Metal Gear was awesome. I really enjoyed it. All the characters, like I said before, I really like. There's not an insane amount of development to them, but I do like them for what they are. The voice acting. Again, I'm impressed with the amount of voice acting. I mean, yeah, it is a Sega CD game, but that was when a lot of voice acting got into games. But the voice acting here, it's not the best. I'll admit that. It's definitely lacking in spots, but I thought it was good overall. I'm glad it's there instead of just standard text. I do appreciate that the voice acting was in here, and it's not as bad as I would have expected for a game like this. The story, I forgot to mention this, it does get a bit hokey at times. Another problem I have with it really is it goes for emotional moments at times, and they kind of fall flat to me. And part of that is the voice acting, which is why I'm mentioning this now. The voice acting just doesn't sell those emotional moments, and I found them just kind of eye rolling. It was not so great there, but overall, the story and voice acting, fantastic overall. Finally, I want to mention the shooting sections in this game. This isn't just an adventure game. There's some shooting sections to this game where you can actually use a light gun, the Justifier, I think, if you have this on Sega CD. I had to just use the controller, unfortunately. And these shooting sections are probably the weakest part of the game. There's not too many of them, which is good, but they're basically set out in these grid, it's set out in a grid, and you have to shoot either a Snatcher or these little bug things at some points. There's really not many of these sections, but you kind of move your aimer in a grid and then press the fire button and you'll shoot them, and they'll pop up one by one in different spots on this grid. With the controller, I found it was hard to aim, and towards the end of the game, there's a section that was actually really hard for what they expected out of you, especially with a controller. I don't know how this plays with a light gun. I'm very curious to see how that would play. I thought these shooting sections, there'd be more of them in this game. I thought there'd be more of a focus on them. But you know what? I'm glad there isn't, because they're not great. And towards the end, I kind of got frustrated because there's a save point, and then you have to go through two kind of difficult shooting sections. But they're not fun. The aiming is a bit wonky. But there are some good shooting sections, which I don't want to spoil. But they play out differently than the normal just, look around this grid and then enemies will pop up and you shoot them. There's a few instances where they're a bit different. I'm not going to spoil those, but those are actually well done. But overall, it's a weak part of the game, but it's nothing that would, drag down it doesn't drag down my enjoyment of this game too much. So that about covers it for Snatcher, but the important thing, is it worth the $200 to $250 price tag? Okay, it depends. If you love visual novel or graphic adventure type games and you have a Sega CD and you can afford it, and you're hardcore into collecting, go for it. I think this game is totally worth that price if you fit that category. If you're not into visual adventure games too much, or you just simply can't afford it, go with the ROM. Normally, I don't endorse emulation, but for games like this that are not readily available, or you just can't, or they're just too pricey and you can't find them, I'd recommend it. And this is one of those games where, honestly, I'd recommend playing it, for sure playing it. It's just one of those forgotten classics. I really wasn't, I was surprised to see how much I enjoyed this game. It really caught me off guard. So I definitely recommend either way. You definitely got to check out this game. I wish there'd be a real release. I don't know why they're not doing that. And I guess, in Police Knots, Kojima's game that's kind of like a spiritual successor to this, I really want to play that now, seeing how great this game was. But that will do it. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.